Hey guys! If you are watching this video, that means you are considering doing the individual oral as your final assessment for the year. I'm really glad that you're considering this option. I do understand that it may not be the more popular option, but the one thing I really like about it is that it gives us an opportunity to sit face to face one more time. I get to see you guys one last time for this year, and just listen to your great ideas. So I'm glad that you're considering this option if you're watching this video. So let's go over the individual oral and the expectations here. So with the individual oral, the goal is to examine the ways in which the global issue of your choice is presented through the content and form of two works that you have studied throughout the year. For the purposes of our modified assessment, one of those works does have to be The Color Purple. However, you can choose any other option that we have looked at through this year from the other books, graphic novels, short stories, poems, whatever you would like to look at. I know that does present some limitations to you because of access to materials. You may not have some of the books that we did earlier this year. But I will say many of those texts are available for free online. You can check them out from a digital library source. You can access really any of the short stories via online methods. And if you have trouble with those and you want to use one of the short stories, just reach out to me and I'll send you a copy of it. I do have all of those, as well as the poems and the poem packets. So what we're looking here is to find a global issue that is of interest to you. And I really think that the first thing we need to talk about is, what do I mean by a global issue? So we're going to scroll down here to the bottom of this document, and don't get overwhelmed with all that other stuff. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. So a global issue is a big idea, a universal idea or issue that affects so many people. So when you're trying to contemplate what kind of global issue you want to look at, you need to think about three different things. Is the issue you are considering of a wide scale significance? Number two, is the impact felt in everyday local context? So it needs to not just be something that's happening across the world, it needs to be something that happens right here as well. And is that issue a transnational matter? So remember, this all comes back to this idea of global studies. We are a GS class, global studies. So we are transcending boundaries of locale, right? This is a global study because we are moving into a global economy. So you could look at things like culture, identity, and community. You could look at beliefs and values in education, art, creativity, and imagination, politics, power, and justice, science, technology, and environment, and many other things. And this document is, of course, going to be available to you. But I think the key issue here is that you look at something that genuinely interests you. So moving on from that, the way this assignment is going to work is it is a sit-down, face-to-face meeting. We'll do this over Microsoft Teams. You will present your global issue, and you will talk about how this global issue is sort of balanced as a fulcrum in two different texts. So, in preparation for organizing your response, you are going to select your two literary texts, and this is a really good organizational document here. When I first looked at it, I found it to be a little bit overwhelming, and I thought, maybe I should rewrite this and kind of simplify it down for my classes, since this is probably the first time you will have done an interactive oral like this. However, it's so very thorough, and it's up to you how you approach or attack this document. You could do it as elaborately and specifically as you want, or as minimalistically as you want. So therefore, I've ultimately decided not to adjust the document unless you request it, unless you say, Ms. Taylor, I really do want to do the IO, but I'm just too overwhelmed by this organizer. Can you put something together for me that's a little bit more streamlined? And if you make that request and a couple other students make that request, then I absolutely will do that. But looking at this first page, this is about your extracts. So what you want to do is have an extract A and extract B from the literary works that you are looking at. And this is going to be no more than 40 lines of quotation or text extracts from what you're working with. And as you get these two bits of information from your works, you are going to have a center concept at which you balance how you're talking. So it is a comparative work. You're going to talk about ideas from work A, and then compare, contrast, analyze them as a fulcrum to what's happening in work B. So it really is a balance. You do need to go back and forth. You don't want to just talk about work A for forever and then run out of time potentially and then just talk about a couple points from work B. It really is about that balance of back and forth. And I love this document because it gives you some really great questions here to help you frame your analysis of the two works. So these questions like, why do the texts and the global issues matter? You know, you want to explain that on that larger scale. And again, it says in your assignment document, you do not have to have a work in translation. We're going to modify that for the purposes of this text. Although if you do want to stay true to the works in translation, we have those. Persepolis is a work in translation. Some of the poetry works in translation. So be aware that those are things out there. We just didn't really address that much this year because you're going to go into depth in the next year. So moving down this page, after you've had your points to compare and contrast, then you have this portion down here that states, examine the ways in which the global issues of your choice is presented through content and form of the literary works that you have chosen. So here it's not just about what's said in the text. It's about how the text is presented. Is it a novel? Is it a graphic novel? Is it a memoir? Is it a poem? Is it a short story? Is it told in epistolary style? This is where you really get into that form and content balance there. And that's going to be really important for you to discuss in your presentation. So the bottom here has different ways to organize your evidence, responses for each one, and make sure that you're keeping it balanced. Another reason why I really like this graphic organizer setup. I know it does look complicated, but it's really, really well done. Moving down, planning your I.O. Remember, you and I are just going to sit and you're going to talk to me about the global issues in these works. You can have an outline in front of you with no more than 10 bullet points, and you can have your extracts from the work, so you'll be able to cite those and speak directly to them. What you don't want to do is write a paper and try to read it to me online. This is a discussion, so you're going to be talking to me, and I might ask you some questions. I want to hear your thoughts, and I want them to come directly from you. So when you're planning out your outline, this gives you a pretty solid structure for how to outline your responses, keeping to that introduction of your global issue and your argument that you're putting forth, the 10 points and body of your argument support, and then gives you space for conclusion. So, and they really should just be bullet points. You do not want sentences that you're going to read, because then your response becomes inauthentic, right? We want authentic responses. So at the bottom of the page here, you're going to see how I'm going to look at it and score your grade. Of course, just like all the other assignments, this is going to be a pass-fail, but I will give you more specific feedback because this is an important assessment that you'll be doing next year. So it's going to be really good for you to have this practice as you go along. All right, guys, I'm getting ready to hit the 10-minute mark, and I don't ever want my videos to be more than 10 minutes. So if you have any questions, please reach out, and we will talk about them. Thanks.